So here we are, it's Mr. Tush over at Global, and I'm going to show you how to use a list picker component. And I'm going to use a really simple, actually really boring piece of software where you're just going to pick between the numbers 1, 2, and 3. And before we even get into the component, all I have set up here are three things that you know how to do. I took three vertical arrangements, go to the layout, I took the vertical arrangements, and I have them right here, 1, 2, and 3. And inside of them, I put these three JPEG images, a JPEG of a number 1, a number 2, and number 3. That's all I have. So that stuff is old hat. We know how to do that. Now I'm going to add one element. And the element I'm going to add, the component I'm going to add, something called the list picker. I'm going to actually toss it above everything. You have to be careful. I don't actually want this to be a part of the verticals. I want this to be above everything. So I'm going to go ahead and stick it there, and I'm going to have it fill the width, fill parent, and I'm just going to leave that there, and not even going to deal with the text right now. Then we're going to go over to blocks. So we got to program this because right now it's not doing anything. I've just got this list picker, and we've got these three items. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to this new page, and of course I'm going to need a variable. And I'll call this variable numbers. So this is initialized variable numbers, but I don't actually want this variable to be one value. I want it to be a list, so I'm going to tell it to make a list. And over here in the list drawer, I have this thing called make a list, and I'm going to want it to say 1, 2, and 3. Now you've already noticed you've only got 2 slots here. Well, I'm going to make it have 3 slots. I'm going to use the mutator. You know how to use that. You've seen the mutator before. Now I have 3 slots. And I'm going to put in 3 text elements right here, okay? I'm going to call this first text element 1. And then I'll duplicate it, and I'll change this to 2. And then I'll duplicate it, and I'll change this to 3. So all I've got here is a variable, and this variable numbers refers to this list. Often in math class you'll hear it called array nowadays, but it's a list, 1, 2, and 3. And the next thing I need to do is I need to tell the app inventor that when it starts, this is a variable, and this variable means this. So I'm going to tell when the screen starts now, this little value here, screen 1, when screen 1 initialized, that event handler tells the computer or tells the app when you start, do something. And when you start, what I want it to do is I want it to go ahead and set the list picker. So we're going to bring in the setter box for the list picker, and I'm not going to set the background color. I'm going to set something called elements. So I'm going to tell the list picker elements, the things that make the list picker pick a list. Well, I have to tell it to look for this variable. So I'm going to add this thing called get, and in here I'm going to set it to global numbers. So now all I've done is I've said when the app starts, just set the list picker to this variable, get global numbers, and use the list picker for these list right here. And let's take a look at it in the app. You'll see that the app doesn't do much yet, but you will see that the app does, in fact, function as a list picker. So let's take a look at that. So here we are looking at the list picker programmed to give me a list, and that's all it does. I'm going to hit the list picker right here, and I've got my 1, 2, 3 just like I programmed it. Each time I hit it, it's just going to go back. I haven't actually told it to do anything with the selection yet, but my list picker is working. There you go. So here we are back at the app, and we know that our list picker works. We tested this code, but now we want it to do something. And what we want it to do is when I get that list of 1, I want it to show me the 1. And when I get the list of 2, I want it to show me the 2. And when I pick off the list for 3, I want it to show me the 3. Moreover, I want it to show me the 1 and not anything else. So I can have the button and the number 1. When I jump to 2, I don't want to see 1. I don't want to scroll. I just want the 3 vertical screens, the 3 numbers to interchange. So here's how we're going to do it. The first thing we need to do is we need to create some procedures. And these are procedures that we're going to design ourselves. And again, this app is not terribly exciting, but when you realize how to do this app, you realize that you can expand it into some pretty sophisticated stuff, where you can do a lot with quizzes, and you can do it with different, tutorials and ABC videos and teach kids things. A lot of fun. So we're going to open up our procedure. We're going to call this one visible. And the purpose of this procedure is going to make that one vertical visible. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it to set vertical 1, visible, and then I'm going to go over here to the logic, and this true and false is like yes and no. So I'm going to tell it to make vertical 1 true. Well, that's not a big deal. The vertical 1 is already visible. And then I'm going to tell it to set vertical 2. I'll do it the old-fashioned way. We're going to do it set vertical 2 to false. Now, if vertical 2 visible is false, that means it's not visible. I'll duplicate it. That's another shorthand way to do it. I'm going to set vertical 3 to false. So if you look at this, when this procedure is called, and I haven't called it yet, but when this procedure is called, this vertical will appear, this vertical 1, this number 1 will appear, and then 2 and 3 will disappear. That's exactly what I want it to do. And then I'm going to make 3 of these. Watch this. I'm going to duplicate this. Get exactly the same thing. I'm going to rename it to visible. And I'm going to call it vertical 1 visible, false, vertical 2 visible, true. And then leave vertical 3 invisible. I'm going to duplicate it again. And I'm going to call it 3 visible. And I am going to set vertical 1, sorry, will stay false, my bad. And I'm going to make vertical 3 visible, and I'm going to make vertical 2 false. So when I call 1 visible, the only one I see is the number 1. I call 2 visible, the only thing I see is number 2. And when I call 3 visible, the only thing I need is number 3. Now we're almost done, but now we get to write our algorithm. Let's talk about this list picker. What we've told it to do now is we've told it, okay, when you're list picker, you need a list. We're going to tell it to use this list. Now what do we do with it? Well, let's give it some instructions. I go to list picker and I pull up this controller called list picker after picking. And this event handler, sorry, I called it a controller, the event handler, after picking, tells the program what to do after something is chosen off the list. So what we need to do is we need to evaluate the choice. And for evaluations, we always use if-then. So if we're going to evaluate something, we use an if-then. And when we do that, we're going to need a logic box. So we're going to need an equals box. I'm going over to logic. And it's going to check if 2 things are the same. What are the 2 things that are going to check? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the selection. So I'm going to take list picker 1, scroll down to it. It's not necessarily visible, so don't worry, I'm going to make it visible for you. List picker 1, then something called selection. So this right here says, okay, if the list picker 1 selection, if the thing I pick off this list is, and I haven't told it what to pick. And this is a helpful thing to do. You're going to duplicate the 1. So you have exactly what you type here is here. These match exactly. You can't have a space for this to work. If there's a space after this 1 and not a space after this 1, it won't work. But what you're going to do is you're going to say, if list picker selection rather, picks the number 1, then I want you to call the 1 visible. So we're going to call this procedure 1 visible. So if the list picker selects 1, it's going to get vision 1, which is fine, but I haven't done anything with the other 2 yet. So I need to add an else. So if it gets 1, do 1 visible. Otherwise, and then I'm going to make it look again. Let's stick another one in here. And I'm going to go back to my logic. Throw my logic in here. And I'm going to go in here. And I'm going to say if list picker 1, forget that it says background color, if I select, and you guessed it, if I select the number 2, then I'm going to call the procedure to visible. So if it picks 1, I'm going to get me the 1. Picks 2, I'm going to get me the 2. And then finally, and here's the trick, I'm going to throw in an else. And the else simply says, if I don't see 1 and I don't see 2, then show me 3. The funny part is 3 will just make things disappear, but it will work. I don't have to have this whole thing because it's either going to give me 1, 2, or 3. And if it's 1, give me 1. If it's 2, give me 2. But if it's not 1 or 2, just give me 3 because that's what you picked. And as we're going to see in a minute, once I boot that up, that's exactly what my app is going to do. Before we do, I'm going to show you one last little trick. See how it scrolls here? That's because I have each vertical set as visible. Well, I'm going to default visible or vertical 2 to invisible and vertical 3 to invisible. That way, I have just the 1 when it comes up. And I'm going to change my text for the list picker. You see where it says text for list picker 1? I'm going to go in here and I'm going to change it. I'm going to change that to choose a number. Now, once I do that, this entire thing should work. And if I pick a number, it'll pop up and it'll allow me to jump between the different screens. And I can look at number 1, 2, or 3. Now, as you can tell, once you expand this, I can have list picker 1 go to the number 1 and give me a number, or say a number. Or I can have it be answers to questions. I can do lots of things with a list picker. But a list picker is a neat way to navigate through a lot of content inside of an app. Good luck writing your apps, and next I'm going to show you how it works on the App Inventor, on the tablet itself. So here we are at the app itself, and this is exactly what we programmed. And I'm going to use my list picker here, so I'm going to hit the list picker, and it gives me 1, 2, and 3. And I'm going to jump over to 3. Now we know we're actually using the else statement, but the fact is the end user gets to pick between anything I put on this list. I can make this list as long as I need to, but it's just going to allow me to jump between elements on the list. And as you can see, everything you coded worked exactly as you designed. I hope you have fun with this, learning to program a wide variety of navigational ideas using list pickers. Thanks for watching.